Hello, everyone, and welcome back.
I just thought you guys wanted to hear that again.
Brian, what the fuck? We're already off the rails. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris, Willie, and Trevor, part of the Nova Insider Network, and brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I guess it's the remix because I just had to skip track. But we're back after another Villanova victory, if you want to call it that, but it counts in the win column. All the metrics went the wrong direction, but it counts in the win column.
Put it in the left column.
Yes, that's right. And we beat Xavier last night. Oh, it was a final score, 66-65.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the score was we had after Longino hit that 3-1 +2 is what we had. And that was like the only points we scored in like 6 minutes of gameplay. But whatever, we won.
3-0 in Big East play, just like we all thought.
Yeah. And really quick, in like literally 2 minutes time, we're going to bring on the guys from Eye on the Storm Pod, Dave Baroff and Frank, who do a great job with the Eye on the Storm podcast. And we'll talk a lot about St. John's, but just really quick, want to have an instant reaction to the Xavier game. And real quick, I just want to hit on Alpha Dog. We're going to give an Alpha Dog award out for just that game. We've been dying to give this award to him, but Dixon's been gone crazy, etc. But finally, we get to give the Alpha Dog of the Week award to Hakeem Hart, who very much deserves the Alpha Dog award. So that's huge. Shaq Fit man play of the game. Could it also go to the Hakeem Hart on his board on the free throw?
Probably. You got to give it to – anytime you pull out the 5-point play, I think you got to give it to him.
I was going to go on Gino's 3.
On Gino's 3, he kind of kicked the leg out. I don't know.
That's called high IQ.
Yeah. No, it's like we said, we've been looking to give this to Hakeem.
Yeah.
Everybody is in agreement that he's been playing beyond our expectations. Maybe that's on us for having not as high expectations as we should have, but he is the glue guy, glue stick embodiment of what we've been needing down the stretch lately. So that's off to Hakeem.
Yeah. I mean, look, my takeaway from last night, there's a lot of feedback you could go one way or the other with last night's game. Where I just want to end up with is that like we won, right? Like,
yep.
And
won the game.
I don't know if you guys saw, there was a clip of what was it, Randolph Childress, was that his name? He's the guy on Field of 68. And there was a clip of him, and he's like, I think Villanova could win the whole conference because they're without Justin Moore, and they keep finding ways to win games. Despite things going wrong, etc. And when you keep finding ways to win games, like that's going to bode well. Now, I'm not saying that I think we're going to win the conference. I think the guys that are about to bring on this podcast will have something very strong to say about that. But that being said, I think there's something to be said for just like, hey, we got really pissed off after K-State. We're pissed off about other games that we lost so close. We won one, so you know what? I'm not going to get pissed off about what happened down the stretch there. There's things to talk about, but I'm not going to get pissed off about what happened down the stretch there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's on the right side of the column. Like, you know, these are the wins that we we should have felt this way after Penn. We should have felt this way after Drexel. Like, we didn't play well. We probably shouldn't have won, but we did. We ended up, it's on the right side of the column. I think, like, at the end of the day, Kyle put a W on the board. If it was an L, it's a separate thing. And it's weird to say that there's a delineation between, like, well, you played the same, but you won and you lost, but that's what it is. It's a game of inches. It's a make or miss league, and we missed less than they did. Like, I wouldn't say we made more, because it wasn't like we played that well, but we just missed less than they did. And at the end of the day, you put the W on the board.
And it's a game that Jay Wright attended, so that's also impressive to overcome that level of adversity.
I didn't watch live, and then, like, I rewatched this morning just so I was like could see everything. I have YouTube TV recording everything, and I was going through and like they flashed to Jay Wright, and I was like, "And we won this game!" I was like,
"I love that it's becoming a thing." All right,
and quickly, this is one of those that nobody will ever talk about again. It's one of those, like we've been talking about, middle of the pack Big East teams that we needed to beat, and we did, and let's not talk about it again.
It's a January game.
Let's do it. All right, we're going to hit the ad, and then we're going to bring on the guys from the Eye on the Storm pod.
Today's episode of the Full 40 is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Home Field produces some of the best quality vintage collegiate apparel on the market. You won't find better game day gear anywhere else. Home Field has the ultimate collection of old school logos and looks with the best quality around. Shop t-shirts, crew necks, hoodies, bomber jackets, and more at homefieldapparel.com. Don't forget to use code NOVAINSIDER for 15% off your first purchase. That's code NOVAINSIDER at homefieldapparel.com.
All right, is Brian just holding Willie hostage?
There we go. There we go.
All right, we got everybody. All right, so thanks. So first of all, we're back from the ad read, and we got Dave and Frank from Eye on the Storm pod joining with us. Dave and Frank, welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for welcoming us into your home.
Yeah, glad to be here. This is a slick setup you guys got. I feel like an actual professional podcaster here, so this is nice.
I'm taking notes.
Our doorman can't figure it out, so he's kicking people out, pulling people in, but it's fine.
I'll slide him a 50 on the way
out. So guys, thank you for joining us today. And I got to be honest with you. I think there was a lot of hype coming into this when we started talking about doing a crossover podcast. It was about like maybe a month or so ago, back after you guys got some good wins. You got that win over Utah. We had the battle for Atlantis situation. And then it was like a couple questionable moments in late November, early December. But all of a sudden, this game's got a lot of juice all over again. And I'm really looking forward to Saturday. Rick Pitino, that I can't remember the last time we had Rick Pitino in the Finneran Pavilion. I'm going to guess it's probably not going to happen many times more after this. But I mean, you're going to have a Hall of Fame coach on the sidelines. That's not Jay Wright. And it's going to be a big time Big East showdown that has a lot of implications on how this conference turns out, and also NCAA tournament implications as well.
Yeah, Jay Wright was actually at Carnesecca Arena a few weeks ago calling the game, and you got to see Jay Wright and Rick Pitino shake hands, and that was cool. He had one Hall of Famer calling another Hall of Famer's game. That was dope. I actually look back, and Rick Pitino hasn't done really well against Villanova historically. When he was with Louisville, he actually went 5-6 against them. Now, I'm not sure for the rest of his career, but I think Rick Pitino's got a little bit of catching up to do in against Villanova. But as far as the juice for this game, so much juice. I think you can credit both sides here. Villanova going 4-0 now in conference. I mean, without Justin Moore, of course. And St. John's is starting to come together because of their defense. They got another win against Butler the other night, did it convincingly by, double digits. They beat Xavier on their home court and went toe-to-toe with UConn. You got two teams that were kind of being talked about in similar spaces, finishing wise, about, in that 4 to 6 range. And it's going to be a really fun one. I think all eyes are going to be on the Fin and on Saturday.
Yeah, and I got to say, there's, I heard you guys talking about the Jay Wright curse that's starting this season. I thought I was really thinking you guys were going to break it, and then you guys started, stumbling down the stretch, but ultimately finally broke the curse. But I think, St. John still has a better record this year with Jay Wright in the building. We're 1-0, and you guys have a couple of losses with Jay in the building. So, this is my personal invitation, Jay. Come on, I'll buy you a ticket, Jay. I'll pay the $500 for you to sit down low and show up to the Fin on Saturday. So, that would be great. But yeah, it's fun. This is the first game of the Big East, or second game of the Big East slate for us that really has a ton of juice. I mean, every game in the Big East has juice, right? But UConn, Villanova, going to the dunk. These are games that have extra juice. And so, I'm really excited. I'm excited for my first time in the Finneran Pavilion. Thankful I didn't get COVID and it was just a little cold these last couple of days, so I could still make it. And
if you see this man at the Fin, just be careful.
Which man are we? Do we have the same layout? I don't know. This is like Hollywood Squares here or something.
I want you guys to know how special you guys are. Frank blew off our pod last night, but he's here tonight. So, the 24-hour bug really was watching the clock on that one.
I mean, last night I had 105 fever. Today I'm back to normal with the fever.
I don't want to hear excuses.
Plus, I couldn't let Chris down. Chris and I go way back.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, let me down instead. That's fine.
I would drive from Chatham to Newark and kill him, and it would be the first time something like that's ever happened. Totally
murdered over a Twitter podcast.
All right, let's talk a little bit of hoops here, because the number one thing maybe to point out about this game is the sheer amount of transfers that the sheer amount of players that weren't on these two rosters last year that are now on this roster. I mean, going toe to toe with pretty much anybody else, and Villanova's got the most transfers on the team, but you guys blow that way out of the water. So maybe if you could, for us, can you guys give us? It's going to be maybe hard to condense it. Can you guys give us a little bit of rundown on everything that's happened? And kind of who the big players on your team are, other than the whole entire conference should be well aware of how good Joel Soriano is. Other than Soriano, give us a little bit of breakdown on some of the new guys and some of the faces that we can expect to see.
Sure. Frank, I'll take maybe the first few, that you can go with some of the other ones. I guess the first guy you guys got to be ready for is Davis Jenkins. He's our point guard. He came over with Rick Pitino from Iona. He started off the season pretty slow, and he's been, really picking it up lately. He is a really good, I would say he's a pure point guard. He's the best point guard that we've got. He's big. He's 6'4". He could take you off the dribble. He could hit the three, although he hasn't been hitting the three really well this season. But he gets to the rim really well, averaging about 7 assists a game. He's the first one. The next one's Chris Ledlam. He's going to be the guy I think that's going to be on Eric Dixon to start the game. He's a 6'6" power forward, smaller forward. He came over from Harvard. He's another big body guy. He is a tremendous rebounder, has a little bit of issues of finishing around the rim, but he is really important to what St. John's does. And if Joel Soriano wants to be successful, Chris Ledlam has to have a good game too. They really complement each other really well. And the third guy I will let you guys know about is the guy who has been recently back from injury, and he is the one that's making waves. His name is RJ Luis, transferred from UMass. He is 6'7" wing, and this kid is special. He's only played 3 games with St. John's this season because he has had a litany of injuries regarding whether it was a wrist injury, then there was an ankle, but he is back. He's 100%. He doesn't have a minutes restriction anymore. This kid is special. He's long, can play defense. He can finish around the rim. He can get to the rim at will. He could shoot it. He is the one who I think the Big East is going to start going, holy crap, for St. John's.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off RJ Luis there, hat tip to Curry, Hicks, Sage out there in UMass land. He gave me a heads up on this guy before we even signed him, that he was going to be special. And I think he's delivered so far in, only a couple games really. But, he looks like that dynamo scorer, that alpha dog that this team was kind of lacking earlier in the season. The other new guys, a couple of guys that I think Nova fans are fairly familiar with. Obviously, Jordan Dingle. He's, you guys play him every year in the Big Five when he was at Penn. Really great scorer, gets to the rim, can shoot the three. I'd say he's probably not really found his correct role. He's still looks a little uncomfortable there at times, I think. But he's a liability to put in 15, 20 points any night of the week. And, he's done show against Nova a couple times when
he'll find his footing versus us.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
I have confidence in that.
And, that the other one I'll talk about is a freshman, Brady Dunlap. We all saw the game a couple nights ago. Brady Dunlap's breakout game, 13 points on 3 of 5 from deep, I think, 5 of 7 shooting overall. So, he's coming around. Another guy that, we might be somewhat familiar with in Nova land, Naheem Aline was on the national champions last year at UConn, brings some good 3 and D off the bench. He hasn't started a lot of games, but he's definitely a guy who has finished more than a few this year, and gives us a nice pop off the bench with his shooting and his defense. But I think, with these guys, Dave kind of touched on the top of the rotation, and those guys kind of all have their roles set. One of the themes I think we've kind of seen with Rick still is he's still really toying with his rotations. And, I don't know if it's purely a matchup thing that he's going on, a little bit of gamesmanship still, or if he's really just completely unsure of who his best, 8 or 9 guys are. So, it'll be interesting to see how this keeps developing each game as the year goes on, and who might get a bigger chunk of minutes or less minutes tonight or tomorrow night or Saturday night. Sorry, it's Thursday, Saturday night when we come to the Fin.
Yeah, we don't know anything about struggling to figure out who should be in the lineup at what time. I really feel for you guys in that regard. Just not a problem we're accustomed to.
Oh boy, yeah. So we've had our fair share of issues there with some of the rotations that Kyle Neptune has put together. I like the way you kind of said, like, "Hey, Rick Pitino's trying to figure out what he has and whatever," and then you come to Nova Land and Cal Neptune's trying to do the same thing, but we're over here being like, this fucking idiot. It's not true. It's just simply that he's also trying to toy and figure out with what he's got. We have a bunch of newcomers as well. All older guys, 4 transfers that we'll just call out just so you guys are kind of fully aware. I'll start with actually Lance Ware. Just because you're not used to necessarily seeing us have a bigger guy than Dixon. But between Lance Ware and Nana Njoku, who's a junior, we've had some guys move Dixon to the 4 in certain instances of the game, or just be the guy who subs in for Dixon at the 5. And each of those guys have combined for about, what would you say, guys, 10, 15 minutes a game?
Yeah, typically.
Roughly. And pretty good minutes. Lance Ware is a transfer from Kentucky. Athletic, long. Sometimes that doesn't come across as necessarily coordinated, but really good. And Njoku never played his first 2 years, but has shown his motor of late and has made some really impactful plays for us.
They've been good innings eaters for us, just like needing to give Dixon a blow 10 minutes and then make a splash play or 2.
Yeah. From an impact standpoint, he doesn't start, but Hakeem Hart has been absolutely spectacular and has probably been the biggest key role in our 4-game burst here since Moore has been down. He's been. I mean, obviously Dixon's been amazing, but Hart has been doing all of the things that Jermaine Samuels, if you'll remember him, used to do for the Cats. Just like all the dirty work, making some key buckets. Just yesterday, he got to the free throw line on an N1, missed the free throw, got his own rebound, put it back in for an N1 again. And it's like, obviously that's not going to happen every game, but that's the type of play that he's made for us, which is like the winning plays that we just didn't have on last year's team. He's a big he's a super senior from
super senior
from Maryland.
He's made. Oh, go ahead.
Has it been surprising that he hasn't started? Because he was like a top 50 transfer in the portal. I know coming over from Maryland, that was a big deal. So, like, was that always kind of the role that he was going to be going into, or was that kind of develop, with Justin Moore being out and things like that?
So it's kind of the way that I think it's kind of been understood was coming into the season. It was kind of like more or less a open competition between him and Mark for the fifth spot. And I think the decision-making process was Mark is a more traditional point guard. Hakeem is essentially like, you could call him a forward, but he's really a 6'8" big guard that you just kind of like, he's a basketball player. Put him on the floor, he's going to make a play. Yeah. And so I think as we were thinking about roster construction and about how we wanted to start games, we decided, all right, we're going to put Mark as the starter. I think we've seen Mark, I don't want to say struggle because he hasn't been struggling, but he just hasn't taken the leap we've been hoping that he needs to take. And Hakeem has been solid all around and honestly great all around. So where I think it's really happened is kind of like we keep him coming off the bench because he's kind of a stabilization force. And honestly, like the way we do our rotations, like Kyle's pulling someone in by like this 18-minute mark, 17-minute mark most of the time. So it's really not that big of a deal. And Hakeem has been finishing every game like this since – honestly, probably since the Bahamas, he's been finishing every game. He's our best defender. I'm like I feel like once a game he makes a play where he just overwhelms a person defensively and forces either a turnover or a shot clock violation. Extremely solid and extremely long. So it is like kind of weird that he doesn't start, but I think it's honestly at this stage we've kind of gotten a good flow. And the other reason he hasn't started since Justin has come out is Longino's also really taken a step forward. And I think it just kind of works best to keep Hakeem coming off the bench and then finishing games.
Yeah. And Longino, you might have a little bit of familiarity with because I believe he had one of his better games of his freshman year against you guys, if that's not
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
TJ Bamba and Tyler Burton are the two transfers that start. Bamba is a second team or Pac-12 honorable mention from Washington State, and Tyler Burton was second team All A10 from Richmond. The only thing I'll just note about Burton is Burton's a little bit unique from a Villanova standpoint. We haven't figured out exactly how to use him, but he's been good. But go ahead.
No, what I'm curious about actually is you all were mentioning that Ledla might be on Dixon, which would put Soriano on Burton, which would be interesting. I think it'd be an interesting matchup, like where I sit back and I'm like, all right, I like defensive. I don't know. And this is where my question was going to come. It's like, how has Soriano been on the perimeter defensively?
Not good. Not good.
It feels like you might have Ledlam on Burton.
Hofstra exposed Soriano on the perimeter. So did Boston College. And I legitimately think the most interesting question leading into this game is what in the world kind of defense is St. John's going to play against you guys, because you guys play 5 out. So that's on the podcast yesterday. We literally said they're going to probably play a 2-3 zone or a box and one and have somebody just follow Eric Dixon around. And I have no clue what's actually going to happen because Joel Soriano, if he gets put out on that 3-point line, is going to get beat. It's legitimately my biggest question and thing I'll be watching to start the game.
What? So Dixon's 6'8" and Burton 6'7", 6'8" too. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's a tough matchup for us with two of those guys on the perimeter. I mean, you might see some RJ Luis even on Burton with his speed and his length. He can guard him on the perimeter, I would think. And that's where the zone comes in and the matchup zone that Rick likes to play. You can work a little bit more around that. So I would expect to see some of that as well to try to neutralize those two bigs that can both shoot from outside.
You also might see Glenn Taylor, and it's a storyline in St. John's world, but Glenn Taylor started every single game up until Butler the other day and played 8 seconds in the Butler game, basically because Brady Dunlap had really good practice apparently, and he earned some minutes. But Glenn Taylor's another guy who's really long and is a really good defender. It's our three best defenders right now. I think we could say are Davis Jenkins, Naheem Aline, and I guess there's a toss up with RJ Luis and Glenn Taylor. And these are guys that are long and that can guard on the outside. But I think you have the game plan has been for other teams, if you want to be successful, is draw Joel out and work your way into the paint. That multiple teams have done that, and I wouldn't be surprised if Villanova will try and do that, given your history of how well you guys game plan, especially against St. John's. And I would certainly think you guys are going to try that.
I would assume we would, just because that's been our play against any quote unquote traditional big. Now Soriano has taken another leap this year and has been terrific for you guys. And I think it's going to be an interesting matchup, because for all the talk about Ryan Kalkbrenner, Donovan Clingan, Oso Iguodaro, right? Like, go down the list across the entire conference of all these big men that everyone talk about. Probably the two best big men are squaring off in the Fin on Saturday, at least so far this season, and especially with Clingan out, because Dixon has been all world, and so has Soriano. Which is, to me, it's like the matchup to watch, and they play different styles, but Soriano, especially before last year, the way he worked on his body going into last year's season has allowed him some additional mobility in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Than maybe the game a couple of years back. But
and he hits the three now. Like he's started to hit the three, and that's also been his other weapon. And Frank and I haven't been shy to say it. We think Joel Soriano is going to be playing at the next level. The way that he's developed this year and what he has added between his mid-range jumper and the three, it looks like there's going to be a spot for him in the NBA. Now, I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but that shot is definitely there. And I think Frank can attest to this. We've been ringing the bell for Joel all season, all off season, and we think that he's been disrespected a little bit. People saw the numbers, all the double doubles. He was only behind Zach Edey last year, but I think you're 100% right that Dixon and Soriano is the matchup that everybody should have circled. Going into this matchup, especially in the Big East, you got two big man Titans who are completely different in the way that they score, the way that they move. That's the matchup of the game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the highlight of my Twitter career, I got a UConn fan to admit that Joel Soriano is the best big in the Big East the other day. So kudos to me for that one. But, I think the other interesting thing about this matchup, right, is my dogs bark their heads off in the background. So I apologize for that. But, I think the other interesting thing about the Dixon Joel matchup is you got two wily veterans, right? Two fifth-year seniors, two guys that were never really, all that highly touted. At least Joel wasn't. I'm not positive about Dixon's pedigree there, but two guys who've really grinded their way through a 5-year career and gotten better every year. I know Dixon was a redshirt, I guess, his first year. And Dixon, pretty much carried the team last year and did the best he could for you guys without you guys having a point guard at all last year. Joel had to tough it out with Mike Anderson as the head coach. So, two guys who faced some adversity over the course of their career.
Someone you love. You love Mike Anderson.
My favorite guy. He's gone. He's not coaching St. John's anymore. I'd happily have him over. We'd have a beer. I'd cook him a pasta dinner. It'd be great.
No, you wouldn't.
I would. I mean, that's bygones.
You would
bygones.
threaten him and tell him to drop his lawsuits.
Frank, I think you're still blocked, so he wouldn't even be able to get that message.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a great matchup. But again, there's the two sides of the coin, as Dave mentioned. It's going to be tough guarding Dixon and Burton on the perimeter, but it's also going to be really tough to keep Ledlum and Joel off the glass. And you guys have done a really good job this year of preventing teams from getting offensive rebounds. And, that's been our strength. We're third in the country.
Until last night.
Yeah, until last night. Sure. But, I look at the metrics, and I think, that could be something to watch too with this matchup is are Ledlum and Joel cleaning up that offensive glass and getting second chance points, because that could be a big difference maker for us.
I also think that tomorrow is a game of, like, if the headlines are new guys and Dixon and Soriano, I think maybe the underlying or the underpinning of this whole game is the tempo war. because you guys are top 100 in adjusted tempo, and we're, I don't know, well below 300 in adjusted tempo. And so we want to play slow. We want to grind you out. That's been how we've played basketball for every year except 2018 in the last many years. Obviously, Anderson had it very up tempo. So you guys might be watching the 91st, tempo, paced team and being like, this is slow in comparison. But Patino has always played a more, quicker style, wants his guys moving around with the ball on offense. And then obviously the pressing and the trapping from a defensive side. So the tempo war here is going to be is kind of partially dictate how things play out. In my view, if this game's played into the 70s, 80s, this could be a long night for Nova. If it's, 50s, 60s, low 70s, this could be, this might play a little bit more into Villanova's favor.
Yeah, and I think it's always the problem I had with the MA era, one of many, but one of the problems I had was that when you play that fast and you only have one speed, it becomes very hard to impose that on other teams, right? It's very easy to take the air out of the ball, take the whole 30 seconds off the shot clock, and slow things down. It's hard on defense to speed up a possession in a way that actually results in a missed basket or a turnover, right? Yeah. Turnovers are pretty rare, all things considered, even if you're gunning for it and playing that high pressure style that Mike Anderson played. So, for my money, I think Rick has a team that can play both ways. And I think, that's why we're kind of more middle of the pack, right around 100 with tempo versus MA, I think was top 10 or top 5 every year. And there was no breaks. And that cost us some games late in games because we couldn't put the brakes on. And if we did put the brakes on, the offense got out of rhythm and couldn't score. So, it's refreshing to sort of see that change. And I think, if it does get into that snail's pace, we have the horses in the system this year to play at that pace a little bit better than we have in years past.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot's going to be dictated based on St. John's defense. Like, that's why I think it's going to be so interesting to see what happens. Like, against Butler, St. John's was able to make them so uncomfortable because they were able to set up the press and the trap. If they're trying to do that on the fly, if they're trying to do it off of misses, it's not going to really work that well. And I think you'll be able to exploit them. But if St. John's is able to make a few shots, especially early on, and one of the things that they did to Butler is that they caused so much havoc on them trying to inbound the ball. It looked like, there were times where they were throwing the ball to a place where there was no Butler player, and St. John's, because they had to get the ball in. They didn't know how to beat the press and the trap. And St. John's defense has really turned the corner in the last 5 games. That's going to dictate, I think, the pace as well. And that's why everything for me starts with how in the world are they going to be prepared for Villanova. I think one of the big things, and Coach Walsh has talked about this on our podcast, that they are trying to implement scouting and teaching these kids how to read a scout and learn a scout so much, and that's something that Patino values a lot. And to get ready for your guys' really great starting lineup with or without Justin Moore is going to be really important. And I think you guys are going to present an offense that we haven't really seen all season. So it's just going to be another, David versus Goliath, Rick Pitino's defensive system versus a potentially an offense that has so many different options. And I just think that it's going to be a really fun back and forth.
Well, it's really odd to hear David and Goliath terms when Rick Pitino is patrolling the sidelines for you guys. Just so you guys clear, I don't know who's David and Goliath in this situation.
St. John's is David, and Villanova is Goliath, in that sense, And we've got a long ways to go. Rick Pitino just got here.
Yeah,
you guys are you guys have beaten our brains in. I think in the last 42 times we only have 10 wins against you guys, so I don't even want to like.
And I mean, people want to tell me all the time when I try to defend Rick Pitino and his coaching record, which is appalling thing that I have to do on Twitter sometimes because trolls are everywhere. But they want me to say, they're saying, well, he didn't do that at St. John's. You can't count that. Now you guys are telling me he did that, so you guys are now David, or Goliath, which is funny to me. But I think it's Goliath versus some kind of intermediate being that's not quite as small as David.
It's David, but David has like a gun instead of
or David did a couple cycles of roids. He's bulked up a little bit now, but he's not quite at Goliath's size yet.
He's been working on his body. He's been in the gym.
Hit the gym, yeah.
So it seems like both of our squads have guys that came from kind of like lower levels and have done well in the Big East, which is cool. I noticed two of your guys, one came from Harvard, the other came from Penn. But like I think we acknowledged today, texting New York City, greatest city in the world. Do you think those guys have had to adjust academically to like the greatest city? Like, do you think it's been a struggle for them to come into the program, not only up their game physically, but also have to go to a real college? Like, has
Rick
Pitino been able to handle that?
Rick Pitino has said that one of the biggest reasons that both Jordan Diggle and Chris Ledlam decided to go to St. John's was because they wanted to test themselves academically and go to a real university. And
we are the Harvard of Jamaica Estates, Queens.
That is fact.
Yeah.
And then the other day, I think it was after the Xavier game, our student section started chanting, "We want UConn," and Rick Pitino in the TV post game literally goes, "Listen, we are not the greatest. We're a good university, but man, we don't have some of the brightest kids in the world. If they're chanting, 'Let's go UConn,' so that's our academics are where we're getting there. We're not terrible, I graduated from there. I'm doing okay."
My parents both graduated from St. John's, so
I graduated the law school. I'm doing all right. So,
circling back to a much less serious question than Brian's, but so in games, I only watched the UConn St. John's game over Christmas break. That's the only time I've watched your team this year. What has been the plan when Soriano gets in like some early foul trouble or something like that? Like, where do you guys tend to go? Because I think obviously our plan would be to try to get Eric on him, get a mismatch, get some quick, lazy fouls on him, and then try to take him out of the game that way to start. That's kind of what he tends to do. So just curious, what has been the roadmap to navigating that?
And so I think that's the kind of the rub for us and the weakness in the way Rick constructed this roster is that we didn't have a real backup center. We've got Zuby Ejiofor. He's a sophomore, was highly touted recruit at Kansas, didn't play much there last year. Another guy we didn't talk about in the intro, but a guy also kind of struggling to find his footing a little bit, although he's been getting better every game, definitely been improving. And he's the backup five. That's his role. But it's also interesting that we're talking about this with Nova fans because, Lance Ware was one of the guys we looked at in the portal. And obviously he's comfortable and content to play that sort of backup 10 minutes a game role. So, the fact that we didn't land him or somebody else like him, is a little bit of a hole in our roster. Thankfully, Joel hasn't really been in too much foul trouble. I think I can only really think of maybe one game where he was in, serious foul trouble that cut down on his minutes from his usual 30-ish. Thankfully it hasn't been a problem, but, obviously, Nova's always been well coached and well disciplined and knows how to draw those fouls. So, and I still believe they are Villanova's refs and not GQJ's refs. So you'll always have that on your side.
I don't know if you've been watching the last couple games, they've been doing everything they can. Talk to the crew at Creighton, talk to the guys last night. That was,
come on. You didn't see the end of the Creighton game.
Which call bothered you guys there?
The game.
One of the four, pick one.
Where there was not a shot clock violation called on a replay of Baylor Shireman having the ball in his hand. And they went and replayed it.
And then going out of bounds on the wrong person. And then last night, TJ Bamba not touching the ball as he slid out of bounds next to it. There've been a couple in dire situations the last couple games that, confirm the refs are not on our NIL payroll.
Something I want to go back to actually is just kind of like thinking about what St. John's has been doing. You mentioned Zuby Ejiofor. It's actually funny. Like half of this roster on St. John's, like I'm very happy with the Villanova team that we got. Like, but like half of the roster were also Villanova targets. Like Brady Dunlap was a person that we were close to closing on. Ledlum, we were close to closing on. Ejiofor came and visited us, went to see you guys. Committed
St.
to
John
you all.
Heavy after TJ Bamba too.
Yeah, so it's an interesting just kind of like thing that like all these players, like I don't know that we officially went after Jordan Dingle, but like we were unofficially definitely like talking to him. So it's just like super interesting to see that there's like a bunch of the shared there's a bunch of shared players on this team on these teams.
And I think it speaks to the Big East, right? You had a lot of these transfers that enter the portal kind of saying, I want to play Big East ball. And, they were talking to a lot of Big East teams. So definitely good to see for the league.
Trevor, to your point in regards to fouls, not specifically with Soriano, but one of the things that St. John's has done really poorly this year is play without fouling. Like they can't stop fouling. They've done a better job, I think, against Butler, but pretty much up until then, that stretch where they weren't doing well and the first few Big East games, they fouled a ton and sent the guys to the free throw line a ton. So that's something that they've been working on, I know, but that's been a bugaboo for sure. So, regarding Soriano, he hasn't been in too much foul trouble. They was in a little bit of foul trouble, I guess, against UConn, and there was a few other games. Zuby will come back in, and then they could go small, and they could put, I guess you put, they might even see Drisa play the 5. I mean, he's a guy that, sparingly has been used, but he's 6'8" and he's a hustle dude. I doubt it. You ultimately would probably go small with the 4 guards, but it's more an issue of them playing defense without fouling overall than Joel getting into foul trouble.
We've done our best getting to the line. At least this year, it hasn't been fouling out the big man as much as it's been, because what's happening is that Dixon will go to the perimeter and drag out the 5 to the perimeter. And then there will be space to drive into the lane, and we'll get fouls called on like the guards and the wings. So when we've gotten to the line effectively, and then we've converted really well, we're always been one of the better free throw shooting teams in the country and are again this year. It's been some of the other guys in foul trouble, not necessarily the big. I'm not necessarily look. I would love it, but I'm not sure we're going to get Soriano into a ton of foul trouble. It's not necessarily Dixon's game either to draw a bunch of fouls. Most of the fouls are free throws are on drives, on putback, stuff like that.
That actually leads to a different kind of point. And Frank, I'm curious what you would think about this, because let's just say they don't foul Soriano and they do what they're talking about and they foul Danis Jenkins. And if Jenkins gets into a lot of foul trouble like he has for a few games, and you pick up 4 fouls on Danis Jenkins by, like, let's say the 12-minute mark of the second half, you present St. John's with another big problem because we don't really have a really good secondary ball handler right now. Simeon Wilcher is a top 30 freshman in the country, but he's still finding his footing, and he really hasn't been a guy who's earned the trust of Rick Pitino yet to run that point. Jordan Dingle has been on the ball a little bit, but isn't really a point guard type, and there really isn't a really good number 2 point guard on the team right now. And RJ Luis has shown that he can be on the ball, but so that's really interesting that if that could be a scenario where St. John somehow finds Danis Jenkins in foul trouble, that would be a big problem as well.
I think coming into the year, I thought if Joel gets in foul trouble, that would be the biggest issue for us foul trouble wise. But I definitely think, that hasn't been an issue. He's done a pretty good job defending without fouling. And, like I said, we've got Zuby there, who's a pretty good stopgap. But Jenkins, there really is no substitute for. But I am almost interested to see what would happen, because I do think the backup plan right now would probably be Dingle, because I don't think Rick really trusts Simeon Wilcher just yet. And, Dingle's not a point guard by any stretch, but he's a guy who loves to have the ball in his hands, and he always had the ball in his hands at Penn. So it might
Hey,
be.
hey Frank, can we experiment with that? Can we experiment with that against DePaul or something like that? Can we not against Villanova?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not saying I want to see it on Saturday. I'm saying I would like to see it at some point, just because I think getting those kind of minutes where he can be that ball dominant guy he wants to be could maybe spring him out of his his little funk. I wouldn't say slump, but his still finding his way, and maybe that could help him find it.
He scored 0 points in the first half against us last year and had 25 by the end of the game.
Yeah.
So we're all confident that Dinkle's going to break out of the stump in the fifth.
Something that you mentioned about like 20 minutes ago is about what you did versus Butler, pressuring versus the inbounds and preventing them from getting it in. If you've watched Villanova in the last 15, 20 years, we don't do well inbounding the ball. So what I would say is just do that every single time. Pressure the inbounds every single time. You will hold us to 40 points. That and a 2-3 zone. I could beat Villanova. Pressure the inbounds, 2-3 zone. We're scoring 38 points.
Yeah, and we've done a really great job on defending inbound passes. We murdered Butler off their inbound passes. I think they probably had 5 turnovers alone off of inbound passes, and a couple more just deflected out of bounds and forced them to inbound from a corner or whatever the case may be. So that could be another big thing for us if we can force a couple turnovers off those inbounds. Something
that I just thinking about like this in the situation that like you all start strong, because what we've seen under Anderson and we saw it under Mullen, just like I'm going to call it a lack of discipline, let's say, of just, but not even just like discipline, but more of like the mental,
go on.
The mental toughness to finish out games. Have you seen that shift right now with Pitino? I'd expect that, but like, has that shifted? Because there were games where it's like, we knew St. John's would be up, but it's like, can they really finish this out? And then they wouldn't. And so now here we are.
100%. Like there's been multiple games this year. The Hofstra game where, it was St. John's did not play well. They let a team kind of come back into it. They never lost the lead, but it was close. And that's a game where I think St. John's whittles away before. There's been times in Charleston when we were playing the Charleston Classic, there were, against North Texas, we won a gritty defensive 1-point game. Years past, you lose that game for sure in a neutral environment. We played against Utah and got a win in a game that went back and forth where you lost the lead and had an 8-point lead. And I think that has been a big calling card of this team and the roster construction of having so many older, 22, 23-year-old kids. That's been a revelation for sure.
Yeah, and this is something I talked about earlier last year. When we played that fast tempo, that affected our ability to close out games, and we don't have that issue this year because we don't have to play fast. We can play fast. We can play. I think we can play with any tempo in the country, but we're playing at a moderate-ish tempo, a little on the faster side, but I'd say much more moderate relative to what St. John's has seen. Even the Mullen teams were pretty fast. So I think the Butler game was a pretty good example of that. They kept coming a little bit. They made, especially in the first half, they just kept coming back. We couldn't seem to get over like that 4, 5, 6 point hump in the first half. And then even at the start of the second half, we came out a little flat and then, started to pull away and they never really got close again. We kind of held them at arm's length, kept them at 10 points ish, 8 to 12 points. And then ultimately just pulled away at the end. So, I think this team it's night and day better as far as closing games and, doing the little things down the stretch that you need to do to close games.
And you're actually seeing them get better. I think that's the biggest thing that St. John's fans, I think, are having this seeing the light moment is that you're seeing a team get better incrementally, game in, game out. That's not something I think that we've seen before like this. And yeah, it has to do with having so many new faces, but you're seeing the defense getting better each game. You're seeing a cohesive game plan on offense. You're seeing the rotation kind of shorten up and everybody finding their role. It's been nice to be coached by Rick Pitino.
I mean, is it weird to look down and look at your non-conference strength of schedule and it not be in the absolute fucking shitter?
Yeah, that's another one, and it's going to get even wilder next year. So it's going to be exciting.
Holy shit! Like, you guys actually played real teams in the non-con this year.
We did. And next year there's been a lot of rumblings. Nothing really official yet, but there's been talk of playing Duke at Arthur Ashe. I think there's been talks with Alabama as well. So, some marquee games potentially on the horizon next season for.
They're playing in the Baja Mar Hoops Classic against Tennessee, Virginia, and Baylor. It's going to be fun next year.
Yeah.
It's going to get real quick.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe versus your expectations. So like Patino comes in, right? He brings in all these transfers. Obviously, it was, there was some he put on himself. And then if I could just say, if Patino put 80-90% of the pressure on the program to succeed, Frank himself took care of the remaining 10 to 20% on Twitter. But if Patino put that pressure on himself to say, hey, if I don't win a national championship at St. John's, I'm going to end my career by jumping in the river, right? Like what was it? Did he pick the Hudson or did he pick the East River? He said the East River.
East River,
right?
East River.
Yeah, okay. But he put pressure on the program, right? Like, and you guys in years past were dealing with the back and forth of like, is it okay that we just make the NIT this year? And it's like, well, Patino's kind of said, like, we got to go out and win. The expectation here is I got to win, and I got to win quickly. And it's been cool from the outside looking in, just seeing someone work with some haste and some the least patient person in the whole program, fan or otherwise, seems to be Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
And so
he brought in 14 transfers. What are you talking about?
And I think for me too, Rick's a showman, right? He knows the state of our program. He knows there hasn't been buzz, there hasn't been a lot of fans and all of that lately for 2 decades for the most part. So he knows his job is more than just doing the on the court stuff, right? And so I think that was behind some of those bold proclamations at the intro press conference. I think that was behind some of this Bob Hurley stuff to a certain extent. I think there's also maybe a little bit of bad blood there, but I do think his showmanship and an ability and attempts to generate buzz play a role in it. So he's doing what he's got to do to boost the profile of the program overall, not just by winning games. And if he doesn't win a national championship here, I might follow him into the East River. If he doesn't make at least an Elite 8 or a Sweet 16, I will definitely follow him into the East River. So he set the bar high, and he delivers every day. He texts guys at all hours of the night with scouting reports and new details that he found on film, and all these other things. And then
ordering some pizza.
Ordering pizza. And then you hear quotes from Paj Alexander when he comes back in town about how they never had film and he never learned help defense and all this other stuff. And it's just like, what kind of program were we running for the last 4 years, and really the 4 years before that too. And thank God we lucked out, and one of the greatest coaches of all time is a native New Yorker who didn't want to leave the region and is in our backyard and decided to stay home and help revive the program.
Yeah, maybe a small assist to Wingfoot Country Club.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a member at Wingfoot, I would not be moving out of New York. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You talk about
congressional, maybe, but that's not on the level of Wingfoot.
You talk about putting a pressure on the program. It's been sorely needed. It's been sorely needed for somebody to light the fire underneath the school and to get behind the basketball program. The fan base has been patient. The fan base has been waiting and has been supporting. It's not like they pulled a Georgetown last year where there was literally nobody in the arena, where they had to beg people to get tickets. St. John's fans have been waiting for hopefully this tenure. He's here for 6 years. As Frank mentioned, he said at his press conference, he's like, there was a lot of guys who just didn't fit my culture. You're out. This school has been on hard times for so long. We're bringing it back up, and it's happening now. Like, he is not wasting time. He's got a 6-year contract. He's 71 years old. He is not here to waste time. He is not here to develop players for 4 or 5 years. Like, he is bringing in old 23-year-old kids to win right freaking now. And yeah, it's taken some time at the start of this season, but you're seeing patience kind of pay off and things come together, and you just kind of hope that it continues. And so far so good, 2-1 in the Big East for the first time since 2018-2019. You hope it get another one on Saturday.
What's your expectation? What's your expectation map for his tenure at St. John? So, like, is this year already tourney or bust, or is there a world in which he doesn't make the tourney and it's kind of still viewed as a step forward?
No, I mean, with the whole like not wasting any time thing, and with the amount of transfers that kind of came in and the level of transfers, I think that getting to the tournament and not having to sweat out Selection Sunday is a very low bar for Rick Pitino. And I think that it's a very high bar for St. John's. So when you marry that together, I think that that's step one. By year 2, which is next year, it's going to present a really hard problem because they're going to have a lot of these super seniors to replace next year. They're going to go portal shopping again in the off season, and they're going to get 3 or 4 guys, I know. So you're going to hope that you've already got the infrastructure, though, now with what Rick Pitino expects. You're not going to have that long time of making sure everybody kind of gets it, and the freshmen and stuff are now sophomores and things like that. So I think by year 2, you're going to have higher expectations. Now, St. John's, like your expectations are already low, so higher expectations is all right. Let's get to the tournament and maybe win a game in the tournament. Like for you guys, that's blasphemy, right? Like you guys are like Sweet 16, Elite 8. That's the bar. For St. John's, like you got to crawl before you walk, and like I think that with Rick, he has proven he has the track record that he has done it everywhere else, that he can get to the second weekend, and so I think that eventually that's hopefully the goal where you got sustained winning year after year after year, which has not been here for 23 freaking years. And that's really depressing, but hopefully Rick Pitino's the man that changes that.
Yeah, and I think, I do think this year is what's the bust though, right? You can say it's tourney or bust, but like, what are you do? Fire Rick Pitino? There is no bust, right? But I think it'll be a disappointment if we don't make the NCAA tournament this year. I think the talent level is there for the tournament. We've already seen it. We're already seeing it in the efficiency metrics. They're all sort of lining up now, and we're kind of past that point where the preseason projections were factored in. So, their metrics are profiling like a tournament team, and now it's just a matter of getting out there and winning the game. So I think, before the season, I might have been a little more wishy-washy on that, but I think at this point, they have to make the tournament, especially, looking at these next 2 games, which, were 2 games, that I think are both winnable. This one, on Saturday is going to be a lot tougher, but I think without Hopkins, obviously, Wednesday's matchup with Providence lost a little bit of its luster. But I think they got to make the tournament this year, and that'll be enough for me. I don't, if they make the second weekend this year, I think that's gravy. But Rick, interesting note. I mean, Rick, the first year at every high major he's been at, has missed the tournament. And yes, Kentucky, they were under sanctions, but they weren't going to make the tournament anyway. But of course, those were all different eras. They were not the portal era, not the NIL era. We've seen lesser coaches than Rick Pitino, very, very, very good coaches like TJ Otzelberger and oh my God, the guy at K-State. I'm drawing a fucking blank.
Jerome Tang.
Yeah, yep, Jerome Tang. Turn programs around in 1 year and get to the tournament. And so, if they can do it, there's no reason Rick can do it. And I've said it many times, like, in this era, you're never more than a coach away. So, this year it's definitely the expectation at this point. And I think, moving forward, he should be a tournament team every year of his tenure here. I would like to see at least 2, if not 3 second weekends. And, anything other than that, I think anything beyond that is
build a statue time.
Yeah, exactly. Put a statue out there next to Lab Chick in between the buildings.
I mean, this is kind of your next stretch of 4 games. So like this Villanova game, and like these are the games that like you frankly kind of need to get, especially, on the road would be super great for building a tournament resume as you just think about it. Cause like, all right, you don't want to depend, and we talked about this on our last pod, just from our standpoint of like, you don't want to depend on beating Connecticut and Marquette. Like that's just like, you don't want to depend on that to get your wins. Right now on the road at Villanova is a Q1 win. Like you get that there, that's a big win. Like you have Providence who's close to it. Like it'll probably be a Q2, but like it's still a strong win. If you're able to beat Creighton, who like is kind of reeling, but like is still metrically on paper good, and hopefully we'll figure it out. Like these are the ones that you got to like get under your belt, because when you go face Marquette and you face Connecticut, you just can't count on that W. So as you think about like being a tournament team, I look at St. John's and I'm like, I honestly don't think you were that much further behind us in terms of like, let's say talent. Overall, like I think it's a very talented team. We just have we have better wins, frankly. Like that's just what it is. Like you have Utah and Utah. Basically, that's like that's basically like the win that's going to carry your tournament resume. So like this is the chance where you start putting those things on the resume, like taking us and beating Providence, who is going to fall out of the top 25, but whatever.
For sure. You're spot on there. And then on top of that too, it's like historically St. John's has not had things break their way. And, you know, you guys have seen it. Justin Moore has come back out, you know, multiple times or whatever against St. John's from, you know, as divine intervention heals some injury against St. John's. But, you know, in this case, Justin Moore might miss this game. You know, you got to take advantage of that. Bryce Hopkins is missing Providence. You got to take advantage of that. That's also at home. St. John's has not had things break their way. It's time to win these games. It's time to, you know, dance on their graves a little bit of their misfortune. You know, everybody else has done it to us for a long time. You know, it's time to give it back. But you're right. Getting a Q1 road win, this is a win that's going to carry the rest of the year should they be able to get it. Yep. And you know, you've already got 2 Big East wins, and if you go 3-1, and I think the other thing is that this is such a huge game because everybody's going to be watching it, but it's a game that's going to put you on the national map. You know, I think people are going to start talking about you as, you know, Rick Pitino's squad is now 3-1. They got the road win against Villanova, 3-1 in the Big East. I think it's going to do a lot for, you know, the public perception of St. John's kind of coming back into the national spotlight as well.
And I also think, as far as things breaking, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. As far as things breaking for us, you know, it's not just, you know, opponent injuries. It's also, you know, us. We've been, you know, relatively healthy. We're getting RJ Luis back now at the right time. We avoided a major disaster with Chris Ledlam, just a very minor ankle sprain, and, you know, still played pretty well as at 70% the other night versus Butler. So, you know, I think it's breaking right for us in multiple ways, and you know, it's on the guys to go out there and convert that. Good luck and execute on it.
Awesome.
So we're coming up on an hour. What is your one statement that you can say, like, okay, if so and so does this, or if we execute this, then we should win this game? I think obviously for me, it's controlling Soriano's rebounding and your offensive rebounding in general, and not forgetting how to execute an offense on the other end. Easier said than done, obviously, but what are your keys that you're looking for? Maybe like an X factor player or performance that that might sneak up. Like, okay, if Dingle, like, you know, something crazy, like if this person hits 10 threes, like I don't want that. I want something more a little bit realistic of, okay, as long as we do X, Y, and Z, like we're good on Saturday. Not everybody.
I'm gonna go with one. I think blocks will be a big one. We've got a few, you know, athletic guys who can get blocks other than Joel Soriano. You know, Zuby can get one. He's getting one a game in limited minutes. Luis can get them. Taylor can get them. And I know, you know, looking at the metrics, you guys seem to get blocked a lot. At least that's what Ken Palm is telling me.
Yes.
You know, you can get those blocks at the rim without getting in foul trouble. I think that, you know, that'll bode well for us. I think the other key is, you know, finding a way to, you know, we talked about it at length, finding a way to guard the bigs on the perimeter with Burton and Dixon. And I'm, you know, I think I'm a little less worried about that. I do think Rick will scheme something. I trust Rick to scheme something, but you know, personnel matters as well. So it's going to be tough. And you know, I think that's where the game will be ultimately won and lost.
I started by talking about the St. John's defense being the biggest question for me in this game. I'll end it with the statement of St. John's pressure defense on Mark Armstrong or whoever is going to be on the ball. They've proven to start figuring out how to really play what the type of defense that Rick Pitino wants. I know that Mark Armstrong has been kind of a lightning rod for Villanova fans in regards to how he is played or not reached his potential so far. But just in general, I know Justin Moore also was the guy who was mainly on the ball. So your point guard situation is a little up in the air. If St. John's defense can impose its will and force you guys not to get comfortable in your offense, I think that's going to be huge as well. The other thing is, you know, St. John scores almost 80 points per game. You guys give up, I believe it's only 60, don't know,
Maybe like
69
60,
points. Yeah, I think it's
70.
69 points to opponents. So, if St. John's can kind of get into that 75-point range, or at least start playing offense in a tempo that's going to trend that way, I think you're going to see, the game kind of shift in St. John's' favor. But this game is all about how St. John's is going to come out defending Villanova.
Looking at Ken Palm's game prep here, and I click off the team stats for conference only. So maybe a little bit better, more recent performance bias, obviously a small sample size. But to speak to what you guys are saying, St. John's has been the number one efficient offense in the conference since just conference games only. Villanova's been the number one efficient defense in conference games only. So that's going to be a clash, right? But on the other side of the ball, Villanova's offense has been the third most efficient offense in the conference. St. John's defense has been the seventh most. So if St. John's defense steps up, Villanova's offense is a little bit less efficient. That's going to turn the tide of the game, given that the other side of the ball, it's such a clash of style. I think a lot of it's going to be on the free throw line. I see Looper in here. He said St. John's need to score 75 plus and make free throws to win. I'll go the other side. If Villanova can get to the line, Villanova's proven that they can shoot the shit out of their free throws. 80+%. That's going to be a huge factor in the game, and Frank's going to be threatening officials from the upper deck of the arena. But I think that's going to be. I think the free throw disparity and the free throw percentage is going to be huge in this one. Both teams are deep, which is not something that we typically say when we're talking about Villanova, but Villanova, St. John's, both teams are deep. So I think it's going to come down to that. Obviously, if someone goes bananas, it's going to be, that'll play a huge factor in the game. But if both teams kind of play as they have been playing, I think you're going to see a little bit of a tempo war, and then it's going to be a matter of, okay, when coming down the stretch, does Soriano or Dixon make the bigger plays coming down the stretch? And that could be scoring, or that could be rebounding, free throws, whatever it may look like.
Well, I think if we take anything away from this pod and what you guys have been saying, it's that Jordan Dingle is going to break out with 35 points, and he's the one that's going to be making all the big plays. So we're going to tweet that.
Yeah, there you go. And I think, just to hit on what you said, Chris, putting on this conference only filter here on the game preview, the worst rated aspect of St. John's defense is free throw attempts per field goal attempt. It's been a problem for us in out of conference. It's been a problem for us in conference as well, defending without fouling. So, we take a lot of risks on defense. And so that could be, definitely could be problematic for us. But I will say, I'm not going to complain about the officials. I promise you, if we get the better of it, I believe
don't make promises you can't keep.
I believe it this year. That, we are a team that can't defend without fouling. And, I'm going to be, when in Rome, I'm in the country club area. I'll sit on my hands, be nice and quiet, have some wine and cheese up in my seat, up in the upper deck.
Don't forget your vest.
Yeah, I'll put my sweater vest on.
You won't you're going to be so mad when you go to knowing you, Frank, you're going to be so mad because Villanova, you enter on the second floor.
Okay.
And you need a ticket to get down to the first floor. So you're not even going to be able to get down there. And you're going to be like, fuck these fucking people.
That is classic upper white crust mainline nonsense.
I got one last one for you guys.
In the good seats.
I got one last one for you guys, a little trivia. I'm curious if you guys would know this. All right, a little Villanova trivia. Do you guys know when the first time St. John's and Villanova played, and can you guess how many points Villanova scored in that game?
Oh, geez. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this.
Can I ask before or after 1950?
Way before.
Yeah, so this was probably in like the first NCAA tournament, I'm guessing.
I mean, you're probably talking like Al Severance era, but if we're talking about way before, that even might be like before the tournament happened. So I'm going to go ahead and say like 1925. So like we had a basketball team. It just wasn't like the tournament didn't happen. And I'm going to go ahead and guess I mean, I don't know, old timey basketball. is
Old
stupid.
timey basketball, like they might not have scored more than like 17 points.
No,
But they also may have scored 200. So I'm going to go ahead and say 100 to like 105.
I'm gonna go complete opposite end of the spectrum. I will say that it was like a 22 to 17 22
Warmer.
to 17 final. I'm
You are much warmer.
We'll call
much
it like
warmer.
we'll call it 100 years of Villanova basketball was 2019 or 2020. Let's call it 1920, and the final score was somewhere in the teens.
I'm going to guess that we played a game that was like an intramural game years before that. I don't know. Call it 1909 or something like that. And given that Trevor just guessed something that was crazy, I'm going to say that the final score was like, I don't know, maybe we scored like 9 points. And maybe you guys scored 38. I looked it up.
As soon as he said 1909, I was like, oh, he's looking at it.
Yeah, December 20th, 1909, a final score of 38-9. St. John's got the win, but wow, yeah, when I saw that, I was like, that was a barn burner.
I remember that game.
If you guys beat us 38-9, I'll jump in the East River.
Yeah. Almost as ancient history. I tweeted it earlier today. The last time St. John's won at the Finn, 30 years ago, almost to the week. It'll be 29 years and 51 weeks on Saturday since the last time St. John's won in the Pavilion in all its various.
To be fair, you did beat us at home in 2018. We just didn't have the Finn open yet, so it was at Wells Fargo. I remember.
And we're 3-6 at Wells Fargo in the last 30 years. We are 0-13 at the Finn.
If you don't get the opportunity this time, you might not be there much longer, because I think you're going to be at the Wells Fargo Center going forward after this year.
I would think so. That's why I felt like I had to pull the trigger on getting a ticket to this game.
Well,
fun fact: the Big East tournament, game where you guys came back from 17 down 2 years ago is still to this day the worst loss I have ever experienced as a St. John's fan.
The refs were great that game,
and I don't think
you don't know what happened to me that game. Oh my God.
You don't know what happened to me in that game. I was literally on a cruise watching on a laptop.
I was watching on a laptop too.
On shoddy Wi-Fi, and I almost jumped off the entire boat. I swear to God.
That's where I met Frank. I met Frank at halftime of that game, and I fucked you guys so bad.
The story of how and why Chris and I met is actually hilarious, because I would always rant and rave about how bad Villanova's refs were, and Chris would always get into it with me from the Full 40 account. And finally, he's just like, "Well, let's meet in real life." I was like, "All right," but like we've done nothing but rant and rave at each other, but sure. And so we met, and
let's fight at the Madison Square Garden concourse.
But the good news for you is at the Pavilion we're 0-1 against teams named St. J this year. So that's
between that
and initials SJ, you have not been kind there, yeah.
Between that and getting J in the maybe it's just the letter J. You have the J Wright issues, you have the St. J issues. Letter J, bad for Villanova.
And we can't shoot jumpers, so there you go.
They lost to Jerome Tang. There's something.
Wow, something's going on here.
Somebody called the Philadelphia Inquirer. We got a story.
We got to figure it out. All right. Unless you guys have anything else,
I had one thing. I'm gonna do my job, and home field's gonna like it. We have this Nova Insider plug, but like St. John's fans, go on home field. Go to homefield.com. Use promo code Nova Insider. Are you helping our pod? Of course you are. But you're also getting 15% off all the St. John's gear. So it's not just us. It doesn't stop at Villanova products. It goes to everything.
In fairness, we don't get any extra money because you bought it using that code.
No, it just makes us look better.
It just looks better.
In fact, it's the code's for everybody. The code's for all.
That's right.
Nova Insider, 15% off your first purchase.
Yeah. And if you don't have any, and if you already made a purchase, just create your email account. Duh.
I don't think you're gonna like that, Chris.
Yeah, whatever. You still get 85% of the revenue that we're gonna get. So whatever. It's 85% more than they were gonna get. Okay. I think that's it, guys. Look, I've had a great time having you guys on. I'm looking forward to the matchup. I guess. Are you guys predicting a St. John's W here?
Yes.
I think so. I think we squeak out a tough one. I think probably like 68-71 or something along those lines.
Oh, so you think that you win the
I
we
think
win,
you
we win the pace game and you win the game.
I think so. And my analog for this is the North Texas game. Obviously, you guys are much better offensively than North Texas, but your defenses are pretty comfortable, and they play at one of the slowest paces in the country, even slower than you guys. And we gritted out that win, and we weren't nearly in our in as good form as we are in now. So, I think we have a similar game, maybe a little more high scoring. That was like a 58-56 game or something. So a little more high scoring than that, but I think a similar pace and tempo, and we gritted out.
Yeah, I'm thinking something 75-70 with St. John's gets it. St. John's has momentum right now, and that defense has shown me a lot. And it's time to prove it. It's time to prove yourself. Time to get that road signature win, and I think St. John's squeaks it out by a little bit.
Trevor, Willie,
give me the Tyler Burton / Mark Armstrong game. I'm comfortable with saying 68-60 Nova.
I have retired from the prediction game, so
I'm going to go counterculture. I think Villanova's going to lose this game. I think you guys will win the pace battle, but I don't think that we'll be able to keep the. I think you guys will be in the 70s. I don't think we'll be in the 70s. We haven't been shooting well. I don't think this is the game we're going to get out of our funk. And so I think you guys will. And I not jokingly, I think there's going to be a storyline about Dingle being close to home and whatever, and or back in the friendly confines of, and I think he's going to go off for like 18, 19, 20 points. It's not going to be like insane, but it's going to be a high scoring output. And I think it's going to be a difference. I really do.
I mean, is there any kind of like confidence within the fan base based on the last game? I mean, you guys basically survived the last one, and it was ugly. Like it's kind of hard to be super confident heading into this game. No,
I'm actually confident about Villanova's prognosis for the season, but in this one, there's a little bit of rust down the stretch there, and I think we're just getting back into our rhythm because we've played so few games in the last month. So we look good against Creighton and DePaul. Look, we won a game that before you guys jumped on, we were talking about how versus Xavier, we won a game that we've been losing under Neptune. And so that's, we'll take we kind of took the positive angle on it and say, hey, gritty is good. Like whatever, find a way to win games. So I'm not too worried coming off of last game as much as I am kind of like, I just think that we're probably due for a loss right now. And I think you guys are kind of I think you guys are on a little bit of a heater right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like we have, I think it's going to be like, 5 games in basically a month period, maybe 6. And then Chris, to your point, I know we've been playing better without Justin, but it does feel like it might happen that game where it's just like, all right, this would have been a good Justin game, even as just like another defender. Taking away whether it's, he got cooked by Dingle, but someone else like at any point.
He didn't play Dingle, did he?
In the historical, not that game, but in historical, yeah.
Is the feeling on your end that Moore misses this game?
Probably, yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, right now, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He wasn't wearing a brace on Wednesday.
He's also
or
wearing
yesterday.
pants, so it was hard to tell. But
Yeah.
But he hasn't been medically cleared, let alone participated yet, right?
Right.
He's played limited practice.
Yeah.
Oh, he has been, okay.
nothing official, obviously. Play it close to the vest.
One thing I want to friend of St. John's, Andre Corbello had an interesting stat line today. I'm going to give you what I want you to guess what it took. So he had a triple double, 13, 11, and 10. I would like you to guess how many turnovers he had, and then how many shots he took and how many he made.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say 8 turnovers, and I'm gonna say, wait, how many points did he have?
13.
13. So I'm going to say he was like 4 for 15, something like that.
My first thought was you were trying to trick us and that the triple double was with the turnovers.
I thought so too. I thought he was going that way.
So, but if it's a traditional triple double, I will say 7 turnovers, and he scored 13 points. It took him 5 for 16 from the floor.
All right, so he only had 4 turnovers, so he actually kind of controlled the ball pretty well. He went 5 for 21.
That is wild. You know,
Green light.
I'll always have a special place in my heart for Andre Curbelo because
He is one of a kind.
we needed the fucking levity last year, and he provided it. So
It's, you know what? It's really funny you actually bring up Andre Curbelo because today St. John's sent out a, hey, come to the St. John Xavier game watch party to the alumni, and for some reason used a picture of Andre Curbelo shooting a floater against Syracuse from last year's Empire Classic. So that's an interesting choice.
things that only happen at St. John's.
No, that would also happen at Georgetown. That would
Probably
also
also
happen at
Georgetown. Yeah, true. Another school that hasn't cared about basketball in a long time.
Still does.
Who's Georgetown's Andre Curbelo?
Primo Spears.
Yeah, Spears is probably the closest. Maybe personality doesn't line up, but yeah.
Did Primo Spears sneak into a press conference and then hide in the rafters and eat popcorn and a million other things we can talk about?
I mean,
That's
nobody.
amazing.
That's the point.
James
Every other crazy player is looking up at Andre Curbelo. Nobody else is on that level.
James Akinjo also probably be a good call for him.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Had a blast with you guys, and I think we'll do a
We'll do the flip. Look forward to having
Yeah.
you on Eye of the Storm.
Yep.
awesome.
For sure. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Talk to you soon.
think so.
So with that, we'll just wrap up here. We'll be back. We're still hammering out the date for next week's podcast, but following that, we're going to try and get on a Monday night at 9 schedule. We're working around the national championship game for football.
I don't know why we're running from the grind. We should
Yeah.
just go right up against it. Us and it's you, me, Trevor, and
Michigan
then,
and
Michigan,
Washington.
Harbaugh, Connor Stallions, Kelsey,
Michael
Plum,
Penix.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we're figuring out next week. But then following that, I think we're pretty much on a Monday schedule from here on out. But we'll keep you posted. That's all we got for you guys today. Thanks everybody for listening, and as always, let's go Nova.